working with Castor in the arena today, so basically I'm just doing a review of the lunging and some groundwork stuff that I've been doing in the round pen. And we're just going to do it in the arena and kind of see how it's transitioning over. And it's not really a new place, but it's a different place. I'm making sure that it's making sense and he's still doing, like, responding to the cues and not getting worried and things like that. So then your next step would be doing this in other locations. So maybe do this in his pasture, maybe do this in another horse's pasture if I move the other horses out, things like that, and then start taking him different places and doing the same thing. So this is kind of just the next step from coming out of the round pen that I do. So his lunging looks pretty good. He's excellent at lunging. The positive reinforcement helps so much with that. The bend and everything was right there from the beginning, and I had to do a lot less work than I usually did. Like before, when I was using just negative reinforcement, there was a lot of pulling and running and chasing, and there was a lot for both of us, so I definitely prefer this. And he's just so soft and bendy here. But, I mean, you've seen how I trained all of this. This looks nice. I love that nice little trot there. That looks really good. Um, I like his downward transition, too. That was really nice. So I like all of that. What I do now is a lot less, because I'm still using a negative reinforcement cue with that whip there when I'm kind of chasing him forward there. I'm just kind of swinging a little bit. That still can be too much for some horses. Castor seems okay with it. Once he goes a little bit faster, he gets a little bit more worried, and I don't want to have that tension in there. So now when I'm training, I do a lot more just clicker training. So he's following a target, he's going around a round pen, I got around the round pen, and you'll see that all later on, but I just wanted to add that in here. And I don't do any of this like desensitizing anymore. He just doesn't need it. So I'm no longer chasing him with things, so I don't have to always constantly desensitize with those tools necessarily. I'll desensitize in a positive reinforcement kind of term, like counter condition, something like that, to new things or scary things, but it's not like I'm using the whips and then desensitizing them, or the ropes and then desensitizing them. So that's just how it's differed from when I took this video. But this does work. So if you want to kind of start crossing over, adding a little bit of clicker training in, then this would be your steps. So, because it took me a while, like I was open to the idea, and it still took me a while to really transition all the way over because I was so stuck in my negative reinforcement ways. But I do like his trots both way looked really good. So they didn't look too bad at all. I'm asking him to step over. And then Castor's also a pretty calm, chill horse. Atlas's didn't look like this. So, and I won't say it will work for every horse that's laid back, but just kind of on a case-by-case basis, if your horse is really tense and really worried, then this isn't working, go get to try something else. So those horses can be tough, but they are going to teach you the most, and that's really I needed Atlas to teach me these things. So I'm asking him to go over to the left here, and you can see that an example of why I don't do this anymore. So he's just confused, and he's not stepping all the way over. I just want him to go back onto the lunging circle, and he's just confused on what it is that I want, because I had asked on the other, before we were on this circle, when I started back over here, I just put that driving whip over his back because I wanted to just have it lay over while he walked, and I think that really confused him. So he just took a step forward there, so I clicked and rewarded, so he's going in the direction that I want, because he was kind of doing like a little sideways type movement, so I'm just kind of rewarding for the direction that I want. So right here, I've got that driving whip over his back, and I'm just trying to get him used to having that touch and feeling of something moving and touching him while he moves, because it's very different. They can be lunging with just no tack or nothing touching them, no rider on them, and then it's very different once tack comes on or a whip's touching them or riders on them. And this is just the first step. So I would have him lunge and then have him have the ropes or the whips touch him. You can also do that with ropes, and then have tack and then have a rider. And then just for now, what I would do is, so see, he's stuck here and I'm asking him to go forward. So this is a big deal about how I don't use this anymore. So I'm just tapping, and you can see he's really tight. He's got his ears back, his head up, he's just frozen. So I don't like this response, and he was fine the first few times, but that's where, like, there's that little lower level tension that you can't always see, especially from this video because it is far away and I try to zoom in as much as I could. But I don't want any of that tension in there in my training. And you can see for how long I'm asking, and I'm asking, and he's frozen right now. So this isn't exactly what you want. And there he steps across, and I'm going to reward him. But basically, this is just like clicker training with the cherry on top. So he can still make those negative associations, and I really don't want that. So that's just something to think about when you're using some negative reinforcement. Asking him to move over here, and there we go. He remembers that. That's much better. So what I do now instead is he's following a target and he learns the cues. I can still put the driving whip on him as he follows around, but I'm not using it for pressure. I'm just using it as like a tactile touch thing. So he gets used to that before I start putting tack on. But he's figuring it out. But that whole thing where he stopped there, he was just frozen. He was like, I don't know what to do. I've been trying these other behaviors. I'm just going to wait. So we don't want that because you have flight or flight is the most common ones, and you see those, and they're usually a lot more like intense. But freeze happens a lot too. That was his freeze. A lot of people forget about freeze, so we don't want that because freeze can also morph into fight or flight really fast. So you can go from horses just staying still, and then they're running where they're fighting or something. So we don't want that either. So he's freezing again here. I'm asking him to go forward. There we go. He's still just a little stuck. He's just a little confused. This is probably just not super clear for him, but at the time I was like, I'm going to mix these two things and kind of see what happens. Doing a lot of experimenting, so that's how this happened, is keeping my negative reinforcement and my positive reinforcement. So that's where I was at that point. But he's being a good sport about it. Like he's figuring it out. And I'm not escalating the pressure, so I don't love that I'm using the pressure, but I'm not like smacking him with it. I was just kind of gently asking. So I don't really do that anymore, but that's the journey. So I'm gonna hang out and eat this. See if he'll move forward here. And again, I'm still just getting that freeze response. So the reason I wanted to keep this video is because of these freezes and really show the difference between me using positive reinforcement only. For the most part, I do use a little bit of negative reinforcement. You can't use that only, but and then just using like mixing a lot and probably using more negative and then just adding the positive on later. So, and by that I mean like I'm definitely asking with my whip, and then if he goes forward, I get the pressure. So I'm still getting that freeze response, and I'm still getting that like maybe not necessarily negative emotions, but maybe not so great emotions about what we're doing. So gotta be careful with that one. But yeah, I wanted to show him because he started out pretty good, and then he gets stuck and he's freezing and he's not sure what to do. And I'm okay with him stopping and trying to like figure things out, but here he's just freezing and like he's not really trying anything, he's just stopping. So really like now at this point, since I voice over these later on, because I have so many videos that I have to go through, I would just be like, okay, this isn't working, we're gonna do something else. Because I shouldn't see that many freeze responses in a training session. Like I shouldn't see any, but if I've gone too fast, too far, too soon, something like that, then if I see one, I'm like, oh goodness, okay, so something's going on here. But he's shown me many times that he's not understanding and he's just not sure of the situation. So instead of this, now I'll just use the target, and then he's following the target, and then I can touch him with the driving whip just as the tactile, not even a cue, but just having something there so he gets used to that while he's following that. So there's no asking him with pressure, there's no moving him with pressure, nothing like that. And this video doesn't necessarily look like pressure. Like you can see a lot worse examples of that, or more intense examples of that, but you can kind of see because it's dark and kind of far away, but I'm pushing and I'm kind of tapping him with the whip here. You can see his tail twitching. He's not really going forward. He'll start and stop and freeze again, and I'm just me pushing the whip toward him, and then tapping him with it is pressure. So it doesn't look like a lot, but it is there. So, and that's it's just those little subtle things that's important to learn about, because most people can see when you're smacking a horse with a whip that that's pressure, but it's those little tiny things that are easily overlooked that are the horse notices and the horse feels. So it's important to see those. But I want to kind of just compare this video to the other ones that you see where I'm using more positive reinforcement, especially the ones that you'll see later on with me lunging him, just using the target, and just notices the difference in him, the difference in his body language. So that's kind of why I keep in something that I'm like, I don't do this anymore. And I've changed and grown and things, but it's an important learning step for someone who might be thinking about clicker training, to get to kind of try new things. So that's kind of where I'm at here. But I'm asking him to back up. Same thing. I'm using the pressure. He's kind of pulling his head away. He's leaning on it. He's frozen still. When he does back up, I am letting go. I probably should have rewarded him there with a treat. So there, that was better. So I'll reward him there with the treat.